Going live in 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8. Under new ownership, the New York Mets made a big splash, acquiring Francisco Lindor. Under new ownership, the Mets made a new big splash, acquiring Francisco Lindor from the Cleveland Indians to stabilize their middle infield, and even were holding on to the lead in the National League East for a while until a few struggles and injuries hit them, and now they are fending. They're trying to fight for the playoff lives, not only trying to reclaim the East, but also claim a wild card spot. And here with me, of course, I am Earl Holland. I am here to talk about the New York Mets and their playoff chances with longtime Mets fan Brandon Berns. How are you doing today, Brandon?
Good, Earl. Thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you for taking time out of your schedule to be on the show. First thing, I just wanted to ask you, I know there has to be a story about someone living in Pittsburgh being a fan of the New York Mets. How did that go? Am I assuming it's Bobby Bonilla related or something?
Actually, Earl, growing up in Eastern Pennsylvania myself, my dad was actually a Mets fan all his life. So he goes all the way back to the Miracle Mets of '69, and then in the '73, and then I was born right around the time they had Strawberry and Gooden there in '86. So I really just picked up his fandom from there, and I've been kind of the antagonist no matter where I've lived now in the course of my life. So whether it be against Phillies fans or even now here in Pittsburgh with Pirates fans, makes it very interesting. So,
in your mind, I know there's been a lot to look at. What's the most memorable moment of your time as being a Mets fan?
You can always harken back to the glory days. When we made the series in 2000. Even the playoff run. They had. With Murphy. Standing on his head against the Cubs, and then going to the series against the Royals. But for me, I think as a fan. Really kind of being able to be in the moment, being close to the city there. We were actually lucky enough to get tickets to the final Mets win at Shea. So when Santana threw the I shouldn't say perfect game, but 3-hit shutout when they're in playoff contention there in '08, I think for me being there live and being able to see that and really experience not only the stadium kind of in its last weekend of glory, but then also seeing the Mets fans. As we got on the train, we were still neck and neck with the Brewers that day, and having that chance to get into the playoffs, that was big for me. So to see that live.
Going into the season, what were the expectations? I know acquiring Lindor from the Indians, and of course the change of ownership away from the Wilpons. I know a lot of stuff had already happened with the firing of the GM, Jared Porter, and then, of course, Rojas being the guy as the manager. He wasn't, of course, the manager that was supposed to be there as a result of everything that went down with the Astros. But going in, clean slate, what were the expectations for this season, especially in what looked like it was going to be a very competitive National League East?
Well, I think, honestly, when we, got the new ownership, I think, as a Mets fan, you look back over the years and yes, they've had their, complete flubs on free agency. We always, harken back to the Bonilla signing and, how that's turned into the albatross contract that everybody makes fun of us for on July 1st there. But, I think, having that influx of, really from, getting Cohen in as, having that money and kind of looking at the market of New York and saying, hey, now the Mets can now really be competitive on, potentially being in the market for all the free agents. And then, when they did make the deal for Lindor, my expectations were sky high, because I think, when you look at that lineup, top to bottom, with Alonso, with McNeil, with Conforto, and with, Dom Smith having a great year last year. I think the biggest thing, as it's always been with the Mets, is, can we stay healthy throughout the year? Because I think when you stacked up even their pitching staff against anybody else in the league, between, DeGrom, Syndergaard coming back off injury, and when they, got Carrasco as well as part of the Lindor deal, that's one of those things to where, you could stack that starting five up against anybody in that lineup. And, that's going to be a dangerous team. And, I had World Series expectations with them, from the start.
Was there a point in the season that you were confident that the Mets were going to go to the playoffs? Was it when they were leading the division, especially fending off Washington, Philadelphia, Atlanta as well, even the small flurry from the Marlins as well? To you, what was that point where you're thinking, yep, the National League East is running through New York City?
I honestly, Earl, when you look back at the right around the All-Star break, right when DeGrom went down with his injury, I think if we have a full year of DeGrom, I think he's carrying us, right through this entire stretch, because, he was completely unhittable. And really, I think he's the MVP of the league if he doesn't get hurt this year. And, as we've looked at, a lot of the injuries, having Carrasco coming back, having potentially Syndergaard coming back, Walker's pitched really, really well up until that point. From that perspective, I thought we were kind of right in that mix to say, hey, Lindor's coming back, getting in a stride. Conforto was kind of 50-50, but, I think a lot of those guys were just coming out of that slump right around the All-Star break. And, if we didn't have the rash of injuries that we did, I think that was the point to where we really could have, made an additional move, to stay in it, if not go for it.
What was the point where you were concerned about their playoff status?
Realistically, I think it was right around when we got Javi Baez, to be truthful, because, I think it's a name, but I don't think it was the, move that we needed to make, truthfully. I wish we would have went and got Bryant potentially from the Cubs. But, I think, as we looked at the Mets, especially in their swoon that they had in their mid-August, when we had the back-to-back series there with the Dodgers and the Giants, I think we lost 11 out of 15. They're playing those two teams, and I think we had a series against the Nationals in there as well. But, I think, that right there, the bats went cold, pitching kind of went haywire as well. So, from that perspective, that's kind of where I think most of our playoff hopes and kind of went out the window. We went from, I think, 3 up to 6 back in a matter of a week and a half. So,
whose charge in the National League East race surprised you the most? Was it the Phillies? Was it the Braves? Or was it even more shocking seeing the Nats fall from where they were, especially a couple of years ago? 2 years ago, they were the World Series champs.
Yeah, I think the Nats' fall was probably the most shocking, just seeing how they tore that down as quickly as they did. Trading out Scherzer and Turner, is going to be a big blow to that club. I don't know if Soto would be able to necessarily, keep them going. But, as they played, I think the Phillies were a big turnaround this year. They got hot real quick. But I think the Braves are probably the outside of, say, the Mets, they seem to be the top team in that division, kind of year in, year out, the way they've been built. So
I know that looking at how good Jacob deGrom is, he was putting up numbers that are pretty much out of this world. What is the best way to go forward with him, especially knowing that he's had several stints on the DL this year, and that, of course, pitching is a rare commodity. Good pitching is an even rarer commodity. How do you go forward with him, especially knowing that he's having durability issues?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing, and I know this has kind of just been a qualm of Mets fans over the years, is, as you look at the run support that DeGrom's gotten, I think honestly, and you can look back at his record, even the years that he's won the Cy Young, he's coming in with a 500 record because he can't get any run support. And I think, when you look at, the way DeGrom pitches and, kind of the run support he's gotten, it's, he's in that 1-0, 2-1 game all the time to where he's, got to pitch the 8, complete game potential, to whereas, if he could get some run support in, maybe he's getting pulled in the 6th and 7th inning if they have an actual, half decent lead and he's not having to stay on his head every night, as we look at that perspective. But I think, the biggest thing I'm kind of hoping for this team as we kind of move forward is, looking at the, potential to spend, from the new ownership group, can we get another, horse in there, that he doesn't have to be the, number one all being, can we get a 1A, 2B type scenario, which I kind of thought we might have there with Stroman and potentially Syndergaard coming back.
Looking at the playoffs, the Mets, there's still plenty of time left to make a run. If they make the playoffs, who do you think the Mets match up the best with in the National League playoffs?
Well, if I'm hoping, I think it's going to be a miracle if they get there. Realistically, I think we do match up with the Braves the best. I think, if everybody was completely healthy, like I said earlier, I'd throw that staff up against anybody, especially if we had, going into a 5-game series of DeGrom, Stroman, and Syndergaard and having, Carrasco coming in as the 4. But, as we, look at that, I think the Braves probably, from top to bottom, we match up with the best. We haven't played great against the Dodgers. I think that we haven't won a home game against them in probably about 2 or 3 years, from that perspective. But, I'd probably say the Braves and then probably Milwaukee in a close second.
I'm assuming of the teams that you did not mention, the ones you do not want to see in the playoffs, who scares you the most? Is it, and we talk about the Mets and their history and how they are an amalgamation of both the Dodgers and the Giants, but who of those, bizarro twins do you worry about the most as a Mets fan in the playoffs?
I think it would be the Dodgers, just coming in, looking at their staff, especially what they have now with, Scherzer, Buehler, realistically thinking of, Kershaw as a 3. That's a tough pitching staff to, look at. And then, their lineup top to bottom, especially with, Betts, Muncy's out there, Bellinger, Turner, that's a tough lineup to get through. I personally think, they're going to be probably the team to beat there in the NL this year.
As we start to wrap things up, but I'll ask one more question. What about the job Luis Rojas is doing? I know that everybody was looking at Carlos Beltran before everything fell, but how would you best, describe his job, especially knowing that the pedigree that he has with Felipe Alou being his dad?
I can honestly say I had high hopes for him coming into the season. I think, as the season's really progressed, he's made some terrible decisions. And I think, the biggest one could be, even hearkening back to when we were just playing the Marlins. He had first base open and, completely misplayed, that the Marlins' best hitter was coming up next. And, it's Bob in the ninth. Potentially, can get out of this. He had a 158 hitter hitting behind him, and he, pitched to, the hottest hitter the Marlins had, and he hit one right over Nimmo's head. So, as we look at that, I don't think he's truly looking into, the situational baseball that I think, a lot of those managers really tie themselves into. And then, he's not really doing, himself any justice in the post-game press conferences when, he's asked about, hey, did you think about this scenario? And, to flat out say, well, I didn't really think of that, or I didn't notice that, it's one of those things to where, for me as a fan, are you truly paying attention to what's going on in the game and, really looking at that, analytics side of things, but also, just having the feel of the game to say, hey, we don't want to pitch to your hottest hitter. Let's go get the guy that's, hitting below the Mendoza line behind him.
I always wonder when it comes to managers, which is a little more alarming. One who thinks they're smart, the smartest guy in the room, or someone who's a little in over their head.
As a Mets fan, it's always that weird back and forth, because you got, on the one side of things, you had the Bobby Valentines that, made more moves and thought he was the smartest person ever and made more pitching changes, pulled more pinch hitters, than you could ever, want to. But then you have the other end where I think kind of Rojas is at, to where I feel like he just throws his lineup out there and doesn't really truly think to say, hey, is this a good situation where we can pull for a pinch hitter, or, hey, just walking that guy, or even, with the bullpen as well, for the amount of times that Diaz has completely blown up. It's, as the closer, he has also Familia, who has closing experience there, going to Familia if he is the hot hand, just kind of keep rolling the same, 3, 4, 5 moves out. It has really burned us throughout the year.
Looking at the prediction for the World Series, who do you have coming out of the American League? Who do you have coming out of the National League? Who wins the World Series, and in how many games?
So this year, definitely thinking the Dodgers are going to go back. I don't know if anybody can really touch them this year. I think Milwaukee might have a good shot at it. Just with their horses that they have at the top of their rotation as well, and then having a Hader at the back end. I think that's a great equalizer as we look at that. On the American League side, I think the White Sox really have the team to do it this year. A lot of young talent on that team. Especially with Abreu and kind of Moncada, running that team. I think that's definitely going to be the team coming out of the AL. And then realistically, I think the White Sox might take it. I think, with the moves that they've made, and then, having that kind of, lightning in the bottle, kind of getting back there for the first time in a little bit. I think, as we've kind of looked at baseball, if you've been there, multiple times, it kind of, you expect to be there, but, could some complacency come in for the Dodgers. So I think White Sox and probably about 6, knowing that Dodger pitching staff.
The White Sox. This is the first White Sox prediction I got about going to the World Series. I feel like a lot of people are just sort of seeing how mediocre the division the American League Central is, and seeing how the White Sox are just coasting, sort of like how the Brewers are coasting, but the Reds and the Cardinals are a bit more competitive in the National League Central, as opposed to basically everybody else being under 500 and being subpar in the American League Central.
Yeah, and I think, as you look at, the competition that the White Sox might have, it's, I think, we see the Rays, but they necessarily don't have the horses that they did last year, with Glasnow being there, and even Morton. So from that perspective, is it going to be one of those things to where that could potentially be the case?
Mm-hmm. As we start to wrap it up, do you have any shout outs you want to give? Do you have anything? What are ways people can reach out to you, talk Mets baseball on social media?
Yeah, big shout out to obviously, my old Shorebirds crew. I think, still being involved in the game, still talk to a bunch of those guys there at the Shorebirds. And then for me, follow me on Twitter at Brandon Berns. Always up to talk a little baseball. And as you guys might have heard there briefly, the little furry one was barking there at the neighbors as they walked up the street. But from that perspective, I give a shout out to the furry one, Baxter here.
Really appreciate it. For everybody who's watching, in about 20 minutes, we'll have a live stream, which will feature the Atlanta Braves and David Krause. But for everybody who's been watching, and for my guest, Brandon Berns, really appreciate it. Brandon, we'll talk a little more offline once we finish going live here. But for everybody, we'll see you guys in about 20 minutes.